I'm Emma Sutherland, clinical naturopath, author, mum, and host today. With over 20 years of clinical experience, I've helped thousands of women and their families transform their health using evidence based integrative strategies. I am deeply passionate about making science simple and actionable so you feel confident and empowered in your health decisions. This channel is your go to for trusted insights, expert interviews, as well as practical tools that help with your wellness. Now, today's episode, we are going to dive into the world of side hustles, not just as a hobby, but as a pathway to purpose, confidence, as well as income. We will also unpack the money side of midlife reinvention, because let's be honest, financial freedom is just as important as passion. Today's guest is Shandra Moran, who is founder of the Transit Lounge, who specializes in helping women in midlife build profitable businesses that align with their values and their vision. If you've ever had an idea tugging at you, but you weren't sure where to begin, then this conversation is for you. Chandra, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate your time.
Emma, I'm very excited about being here. Can't wait.
Now, you work with women starting side hustles in midlife. What patterns do you see around why they want to start a side hustle?
This is a question I actually ask my audience and my community quite often. And the common themes that come through that what they want is they want more flexibility around
Sure.
their work life, when they work, where they
Yeah.
work. They just want that flexibility around how they're using their time. They also
Yeah.
just want a general sense of more freedom of choices, again, around when they're working, what are they working on? And I think as an overall theme, I guess I'd put it under the bucket of autonomy, that women, once they get to midlife, get to that stage of going, can I see myself being happy what I've been doing in my career for another 10, 20 years or not? And if not, then maybe I should start now experimenting with what this next chapter might look like. And they're, I guess, some of the main themes that come through pretty strongly. Sometimes there's health reasons or a change at work where there's a new boss that's not aligned, things like that. But generally speaking, the driver is around wanting to create a sense of autonomy for their own life.
I can really understand that. And around midlife is when a lot of things could be changing. The kids could be getting a little bit bigger. Yeah, a lot of things change. So it seems like a good opportunity for change.
Yes, it really is. And I think it's also a time where women start to get to that point of, you know what, I know some stuff. I've been in my career for a while. I've got value to add. And I don't want to be answerable to this person or that person. And they can start to get to that point of backing themselves and saying that they've worked hard for a long time and that there's a different way of working that might be more aligned to how they see themselves into their 50s and 60s.
And then what are some common mindset blocks that might hold people back from turning that side hustle into a thriving business?
And this is one that is common in terms of challenges for me to be working with women about. And so for some people, the block is even getting started in the first place and they get handbraked right there. Others do have the commitment, the energy, and they get it started and they get to a certain point. But then what can kick in, and I actually had this conversation just this week with one of my clients, and the common challenge is the question of, can I really do this? Never had a business
Interesting.
before. Can I even run a business? Is anybody going to buy from me? Will enough people want what it is that I'm wanting? The other thing is again, a conversation with a client, she said, does the world really need another marketing consultant? And so that question around how will they carve out their space? Can they really do it? That is probably one of the biggest blockers that I see coming up with women, especially. For some reason, I think men tend to just back themselves a bit more. And whereas women, I think, really can often care a lot about what other people think. And if they make this decision, what will people think of them doing this business
Yeah.
instead of the career they used to have? So there's quite a lot of mindset blocks that can get in the way for sure.
No. And in your experience, what makes a side hustle sustainable? A side hustle to be a flash in the pan idea, right? And it doesn't go anywhere. But what are the characteristics of what makes the side hustle sustainable? Whether that's somebody's mindset or ability, what do you see the commonalities are for the sustainable side hustle?
Yeah, great question. I'm going to answer that question with a little story example. Is someone that I worked with years ago, and she had her idea for her business for a long time, and she'd been holding back for a long time. And then she finally got to the point where she thought, yeah, okay, I think I really might want to do this. And so I encouraged her to do a little bit of market research before she went too far down the path. And she didn't want to do that for a while. So she fleshed out all of the idea, built out all of what the business was going to offer, and designed all the things. And I kept saying, hey, just go and have a couple of conversations with people that you think might be the audience that you would promote this to in the future. Eventually, she had one conversation with one potential person who's the right kind of industry and role for what she thought she'd be offering. And that person's response was lukewarm, is what I
Okay.
would say. They didn't poo it and say, oh, that's a stupid idea. They had questions, and they said, how might that be different from this? They said, if I was thinking about it, I'd be wondering about that. And as a result of that one conversation, she just said, that's it. I'm not cut out for business. I'm out. And
Okay.
I was devastated for many reasons
Mm.
for her. And we did have the conversation where part of being in business is realizing that your business is not just for you, your business is for your future clients. And you need to be designing a business that is ideal for you, but also provides and overlaps enough with what the market actually want and will pay.
Yeah.
And so I think in terms of what makes it a side hustle sustainable, something that can perhaps become a main income earner in the future, which is what a lot of my clients want. They don't necessarily want to work full time. They want to have a profitable business that's thriving in part-time hours. So to make that happen, I think you need to create a really solid foundation for your business. And I talk about the 5 pillars of business a lot, which we can get into if you want. But what you really need to be doing is creating a reliable, repeatable system of how you attract, convert, and keep your clients. And so that's one really important factor, that when you have that, it's more likely that your business is going to be able to be sustainable and survive over the longer term. But also the business needs to be, I believe, aligned to your values. It
Yeah.
needs to be aligned to something that you believe in and are passionate about. Because if it's not, if it's something that you go, oh, there's a bit of a fad at the moment or a trend about this, oh, I'll just whack together something and that will be my business. What's going to happen is that inevitably, and you're in business, so you understand this, I'm sure, there are challenges that come up. And when you have got something that's a bit more of a fad sort of idea, often you can just cave in, like that woman that I gave as the example. You go, oh, maybe it's not meant to be. Versus if you really care about the message, the change, the impact that you are wanting to make in your industry and with your client, then you want to push through those inevitable challenges. You want to figure out a solution. You are going to keep going through those inevitable setbacks rather than fold at the first hurdle. So I think those 2 pieces are really important. So partly it's the mindset and the alignment piece, and partly it's about the function of business of what are you actually doing? How are you doing it? How are you promoting it? How are you getting clients? Is that aligned to how you want to live your life? And that's the foundation piece, I think, that makes the difference.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I think about being in business for the last 25 years, I think about where I started and all the roles that I have had within my business. 25 years later, I'm just now, and in the last 5 years or so, I'm just a naturopath and I'm just content creator. That's it. And you have so many hurdles in business that if I wasn't deeply passionate about being a naturopath and being of service to people in the realm of health, I would have folded 1,000 times by now. I really think that's such an important piece that you said around the alignment of values and having a true passion in that space is what gives you the grit to keep going with a side hustle and turn it into a business that is thriving, profitable in part-time hours. I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's so funny. It reminds me of, it was a while ago and I was traveling quite a bit for work at that time. And I had an Uber driver that asked me, oh, what do you do? And so I told him I'm a business coach. And he just said, what's the best business for me to start? And are you kidding me? But I think that often people can go, what's the magic bullet? What's the one thing that if I sell it, I'm going to make lots of money? And I think if people are in that headspace, then business is not for them. Like they won't last. And so I think it's about being honest with yourself too, about that resilience piece. How do you cope with setbacks and with frustration? And what are you willing to see yourself fighting for over the long term? Because without that, the hurdles will weigh you down and you're out.
Yeah, 100%. And out feeling very bruised and battered as well. That's kind of quite devastating.
The other thing that you mentioned that I want to touch on, because this came up in a conversation with my community group recently, is that one of the big things that kicks in pretty quickly when you start working on a business is the realization of all the different hats that you have to start wearing. That you think, oh, I'm going to become a naturopath. I'm going to, in my business, I meet with clients and I help them make good choices and create protocols and all that kind of thing. Yeah, great. But when it's your own business, you'd be lucky if you spend 30% of your time actually doing that, because there's so many other things that need to be done before you even get a client. And we don't know that or think about that, I think, on the front end. The other thing is the support that we are used to having as an employee. And this conversation that I had in this last week was about that businesses, when you're an employee, there's a cadence that's set up that, oh, we have this meeting on that day and that's due that day. And everyone's expected to be here at this time and you work until at least that time. And you just slot into that rhythm. If you have a role and with your computer, you just pick up the phone and dial 1725 and call the IT department and go, Gus, my computer's broken again. Sorry. And comes along and fixes it. When you're in your own business, there ain't no Gus generally. So
you are the Gus.
You are the Gus. And so actually Gus is the name of the IT guy that I used to work with in radio. So I always think it's quite funny when I talk about him, because I obviously miss him. And so I think there's that multi-hat wearing that we don't know about, we don't allow for. And that's another factor, is that your willingness to learn enough about these different things to be able to decide, what do I keep doing myself versus when's the right time to outsource that? Is an important tipping point around any business development, whether it's a side business or just a main business.
Yeah, it's quite ironic, the timing, because I had a meeting with my bookkeeper yesterday and I actually went to uni and did accounting. I never finished it, but I was always good with numbers. So I was just naturally streamed that way. But the first thing I ever outsourced in my business was the bookkeeping. And that was 23 years ago. And I have the same bookkeeper today, still the same bookkeeper. And every time I email her or we have a meeting, I'm always like, kiss, like, thank you. I just have always been so grateful. But I agree, outsource. As soon as you're able to outsource the thing you like the least, so that you can just free that up. But it is important to realize you're going to wear every hat in the beginning.
And it's such a great point too about how do you make the decision about when to outsource and what to outsource? Because sometimes I totally agree. As soon as you can, the sort of tasks that are not your highest value or not what you enjoy the most, try to outsource those. But also I've seen a bit of a trend recently where some people have the attitude of, I'm just going to throw money at the problem. And they don't actually really understand what's needed. And marketing is one of those particular things. I just want to pay somebody else to do the things. And I understand the temptation. I really do. However, throwing money at the problem doesn't, very rarely actually works, because you're not clear enough in your brief about what you need or about who your ideal client is. There's so many gaps of knowledge that even the best implementer can only do so much with what you're giving them. So there's a sweet spot, I think, somewhere in between that, between doing everything yourself forever versus just outsourcing and paying through the nose for everything before you actually really understand the strategy of what you're trying to achieve. So it's an interesting spectrum, I think, for people to drift along.
And then what about the concept of niching? What's your take on, do you niche early or do you experiment with different ideas and then pivot? What's your experience in coaching women? What do you see working the best?
Yeah, so I am an advocate for niching. However, there's some strategies around that I think are important as well. The common questions that I get around niche is, should I niche, and is this niched enough? Can I have more than one niche? And so the answer around that is, I think when you're a solopreneur and particularly service-based, so you're sharing and providing your expertise, then there often can be multiple niches that you either might want to work with or that you could work with. And sometimes it comes down to which niche is going to be the most lucrative, that you're going to earn the most money from. Others, it's which is the lowest hanging fruit that you're more likely to make a faster sale with. And so the approach that I suggest is that the answer is a little bit, it depends. You should be niche, but if you want to experiment with more than one niche, you need to know a couple of things. One is, if you have two niches, they have to be friendly.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean that example that I have used is a yoga studio I heard about years ago when I was running marketing workshops quite often, was they were in Adelaide and there was a yoga studio and they started doing naked yoga. And yeah, it was a thing apparently. But then they also, on other days of the week, were doing kids yoga. And so you can see, right, how this does not work. So if you're a mum looking for a yoga studio for your kid and you see they do naked yoga, you're going to go, no way am I sending my kid there. What if I go on the wrong day? Like any of those things. Versus a standard yoga studio that has a niche of beginner, advanced, kids. 3 different niches within the yoga approach. But if I'm a mum looking for a yoga studio to teach my kid and I see they also do adult classes, I'm going to go, great, she's ready for this. That's a niche that is friendly. So you need to be aware of that. And equally, it applies with things like, do I have a niche with corporates versus going direct to the end user? Again, they can be friendly. Not necessarily, no one's going to be offended that you work with corporates as well as individuals. So just thinking through that lens, the even bigger decision or thing to be aware of if you're going to have multiple niches is that you are duplicating your effort, because you cannot run the same marketing campaigns and try to speak to each of those different niches. So I generally suggest that you refine, come up with maybe a couple of niches that you think you might want to explore, and that you pick one to experiment with for now. And in the doing of that, you may attract some other people that aren't within that niche and they might say, oh, could you come and do it with my workplace? Great. But channeling your effort into one niche is going to see you get faster feedback, faster results than dabbling, bouncing from one to the other, or trying to be all things to all people, because you just will not cut through. People's attention is pulled in so many directions. We're bombarded with so many messages. Niching allows you to speak very specifically to the pain points, the desires, the frustrations of your ideal client, who is a representative of your niche. I can feel I'm getting on a rant here, so I'm going to just shushy now, but because there's a lot that we could talk about with this strategy.
Yeah. So focusing on one niche to begin with, it doesn't mean you're going to stay in that niche forever, but it means one marketing message, one set of everything that you can then learn from, pivot, and then worst case scenario, if that doesn't work, you could go to your second niche. So I feel like being a bit more laser focused is going to be a better idea for people.
I definitely have a bias towards action with that. And I think, like you say, even if you go through the process of building things out for this one niche and you decide, which sometimes happens, oh, they're not the really people that I want to work with, or they don't have the budget. I've just learned the process that you can rinse, repeat. So the point of choosing one niche is to just get started. So roll from there.
Yes. I love the expression, don't aim for perfection, aim for progress, because that's where we can learn, pivot, rather than just hold back, get stuck in procrastination and that stuck mode of trying to learn everything, get everything perfect. It's just get it out there, just start is the most important thing. I want to pick your brains on finance, because I know you've done a lot of work in this space and you work with women with side hustles. Why do you think so many women feel disconnected, or maybe as well overwhelmed by finances in their 40s and 50s?
Money it's a big topic. It's one of my 5 pillars. And I think that for women particularly, there is a huge amount of cultural conditioning that we were raised with and that we perhaps have inherited historically
Yeah.
around what we are taught about money, about what having money means, about what
Mm.
talking about money is. And then for many, it's taboo. And there's
Yeah.
associations that we have as women. And for many, it's that it's rude to talk about money. You
Yeah.
wait until you're offered something rather than asking for what you want. And it's quite different from how boys are raised about asking for it, being bold and all of that. So I think that for many women, there are underlying money stories that really, what is it? You grind your gears when you
Yeah.
start thinking about going into business, because the idea of asking for someone to pay for your expertise, your knowledge, can be very confronting for a lot of women. And
Yeah.
I think that it's something that is really important to explore and to unpack a little bit about what's going on there. And do I still believe that? And is this helping me or holding me back? The other thing about the 40s and 50s for women is that I think for many women, they get to that point and shit start getting real, right?
Yeah.
How long do I want to be working for? And how much do I have to earn if I want to pay off my house or have
Yeah.
an income to live on when I retire? And my God, when might I be able to retire based on my
Yeah.
current trajectory? And I think things coming into sharper focus about what they really want to have for their life and what their current circumstances are set up for really put money, I think, at the forefront for many women. It's not the only driver, but I think it's definitely an important one, because people think if I want to be enjoying this next chapter of my life,
Yeah.
I'm going to need a certain amount of finances to be able to do that. So
Yeah.
money is a whole can of worms.
It is a big can of worms. When you're thinking about mindset and or mindset shifts in women that move from employment, which is that say steady monthly income, to entrepreneurships, what do you think the successful women do from a mindset
Yeah,
shift?
I think the first successful mindset shift that is made is the decision to make a side business. This is what I did, which is why I can say, don't do that. They crack it with their day job or something happens and they just rip it off like a band-aid and go, I'm out of
Yeah.
here. See, I'm started my own thing. And
Yeah.
then suddenly you're met with, "Ooh, I don't know how to do this. And where's the clients and where'd all the money go and all of that." So the decision to have a side business as a way of testing out, is
Mm.
am I cut out for business and how do I do this? You have a lot more space and grace generally to explore and experiment and set things up right by doing it as a side business before making it your full-time thing. And I think that mindset shift is a game changer compared to women that just rip the band-aid off and then have to sink or swim. Some people thrive in that environment and it can be done, but it's not what I recommend, because money pressure, money
Yeah.
stress is the thing that is going to handbrake your creativity faster than anything else. And
Mhm.
so you don't want to go into a business with that underlying pressure, because people say that your energy, your vibe gets out there. And so if
Yeah.
you're feeling desperate, it's going to come through with your messaging and all of that. So I think
Mm.
that's a really important mindset shift. The other thing is actually really stepping into what I call the CEO mindset, which is that you are the CEO of your whole life. You're the
Yeah.
only person that's with you for your whole life. And so your job as a CEO is to create a sustainable life that you enjoy and that it fosters your sense of well-being. And the definition of well-being that I run with is the contented state of feeling happy, healthy, and prosperous. And so our
Yeah.
business really can contribute to whether you're feeling happy, healthy, and prosperous. And so that mindset of going, as the CEO, I need to be making informed decisions. I need to get the right support. I actually need to understand, what is my vision? What does success look like to
Yeah.
me? What's my strategy? How am I going to make that happen? And so there's a whole CEO mindset framework that I use to help people get into that space of going, actually, I'm the one driving this bus. So I want to make decisions that are right for me, because there's going
Mm.
to be a bazillion decisions to be made. There's going to be inevitable challenges and setbacks. So how are you going to navigate that, rather than going, I've picked the perfect niche first time. My first marketing campaign was an absolute stomped it in, made all the money, replaced my salary first time, like all the things that we can be delusional and try and tell ourselves. So
Yeah.
there, I guess, a couple of the mindset pieces that come to mind.
Mm. And then when it comes to financial habits that successful side hustlers or kind of solopreneurs have, What do you think is good to adopt early on? What financial habits are really great to embed close to the beginning of that journey?
Yeah, fantastic. So I think one of the first things, and I keep getting surprised when I come across people that haven't done this yet in their business, is distinctly separate banking accounts for your business versus your personal. It's really important for many reasons, but separating them out. The other things that I think are important are your money hygiene habits
Mm.
around how you allocate money in your business. Paying yourself, I think, is really important to look at paying yourself as soon as you can. And that can be challenging because people go, well, Chandra, I might have earned $300 this month or whatever it might be. I'm a big one for encouraging percentages. And even if you have to pay yourself and then you reinvest that money back into business. So really good habit to go, right, businesses have bills to pay. And one of those
Yeah.
bills includes wages or
Yeah.
salaries or paying for contractors and getting into that habit around it. The other thing is around the support that you need. And you mentioned this earlier about getting a bookkeeper and being able to have the right people supporting you to prioritize and understand the numbers. Because a lot of
Yes.
women have said to me, I don't really understand the numbers. I just look at my bank account. If there's money in the bank, yay. That is not a good financial strategy. But just starting to get familiar with terminology, what just certain financial terms mean, and actually starting to look at setting certain targets for yourself
Mm.
around expenses and what are you investing in. I think that having allocations and in the money that does come in about what are you going to direct to marketing, what are you going to direct to development, working with a coach or doing training that you may need to do around business, and seeing that as an investment that gives you a return, not just I'm buying something shiny because I want it. And I think adopting early on a positive money mindset and
Yeah.
starting to get curious about what's the inner voice messaging that I have about money when it comes to me in my own business. Because there are these money stories and beliefs that we have created over time,
Yeah.
and they show up in wicked ways that we may not always expect. And
Yeah.
so getting curious about what am I telling myself about how I earn money, how much money I can earn, is that helping me or holding me back? And starting to develop some mantras about that are positive money statements about yourself. And we can talk more about that if you want to, but there's a lot around that money mindset piece as well.
Yeah, I think the way we view money is absolutely critical. One thing you pointed out that I have to say personally, I feel was a bit of a game changer for me was investing in that human capital of you, investing in your
Mm.
learning, investing in your growth, investing in your ability as a person to be able to do things. And I think that human capital investment comes back tenfold from a business
Mm.
perspective. So don't underestimate the importance of investing in yourself because when
Mm.
you are selling yourself, which we all need to do, if you've invested well in yourself, that selling yourself is much easier, right? Because you
Mm.
have more skills to draw on, more knowledge. And I also think that investing in yourself in that way, you get to compress time. So if you're working with somebody that has a particular area of knowledge that you lack, you could learn directly from that person, compress their learnings and compress time and piggyback off. So there's also that time compression can speed up a business sort of
Yep.
trajectory to success and it just makes selling easier. So I love
Mm.
that point that you made.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that I think a lot of women can hesitate on because I think, oh, well, I'll
Mm.
wait until my business is earning X amount and then I'll
Yes.
consider doing that. When it's actually, this is the thing that's going to help you get there.
Yeah.
And I agree, no one wants to invest that's going to put yourself into financial distress. But I
No.
think allocating money as part of your education, there's a podcast interview I did years ago with a woman who used to be a vet and then she started her own business. And we had this sort of conversation. And she said, I went to uni for 7 years or whatever it was to be able to train as a vet. Why on earth would I think that I can just go straight into starting a business with no training about running a business and not think that I need to do some kind of training? And I think
Yeah.
that's a really great reference point for us around you're not supposed to know how to run a business straight out of the gate. And so some level of investment in yourself, definitely it's the highest return on investment you'll ever get.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. We have talked about a lot today. I've loved this conversation. Is there perhaps one last tip or one last myth you want to bust in relation to side hustles, finances, all of these things we've been talking about?
One tip. I'm a Gemini, Emma. I never like this kind of anything. So I think one of the things is, I guess, the myth that you have to have it all figured out before you get
Mm,
started. I think that, as we said, I have a bias towards action and being able to adopt an experimental mindset to
mm,
see how does this work and what do I need to learn. I think it's really important to be honest with yourself about not putting too much pressure on your first idea or your first attempt having to be a rock star
yeah,
result. The purpose of it is the learning of it. And one other tip is I cannot tell you how important it is to understand and learn about marketing,
mm,
because marketing is the gateway to you getting clients. So if you want to do the work that you want to do, you have to do the activity that gets you the clients to work with, and seeing that as marketing as the fuel that drives your business, and that it's okay that you can say, I don't know much about marketing. I've got to learn about that, because we all got things we've got to learn, right? That would be my final thoughts.
amazing. So if people want to follow up with you directly, where can they find you?
There's probably two choices. One is head to my website, which is thetransitlounge.com. And
Yeah,
on there, you'll find a range of different free resources. Also, my podcast, which is called The Transit Lounge. I can't even remember how many episodes there now, but a range of interviews and also tips and training to really help you
great.
learn about business. So both of those are great starting points.
Brilliant. We'll have those in the show notes. So it'll be one click away for everyone. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. Now, YouTube thinks you'll like this video right here, which is personalized according to what you like to watch. When you watch the video, please let me know what you think of it. Leave me a comment, and I'll see you next time.